Hello, and here we go. Thank you for watching. I'm Naris, and this is a walkthrough for Mythic Forgeweaver Araz. Alright, right off the bat, I'm not going to talk too much about explaining the mechanics because everything is fundamentally the same as Heroic. The important piece going into Mythic is positioning, and I'll just be highlighting key changes. Let's start with the biggest change. The arcane manifestations, the small adds, must travel through the Void Zone to lose their damage immunity. You can predict where the Void Zone will spawn, as it will always be opposite the active collector, in this case at our star marker. The first manifestations will be followed almost immediately by the Arcane Echo, the group soak. Assign 10 players to stand on this, preferring melee and immunities for the first one. Notably, Death Knights can use Anti-Magic Shell to soak every Arcane Echo, and, well, they should do so. Keep the first Echo on top of Araz, drag the boss away from the Echo, and kill it as quickly as possible. Just like in Heroic, the collectors activate one by one and the fight naturally ramps up in pace. This means you will be traveling quickly between various markers to spawn the manifestations near their respective void zones. You can choose to handle the manifestations in two ways. A. Stand behind the void zone and let them walk through it naturally, or B. Use knockbacks to force them into the void zone. We use both in our strategy, but this honestly comes down to how many knockbacks your raid team has. I'll talk more about crowd control assignments later, but my advice is to come up with a plan and stick with it. Alright, the second Arcane Echo should be soaked by your ranged and Death Knights. If your raid team has a Resto Shaman, I would 100% drop a Spirit Link totem here and then have them relocate the Spirit Link to the Void Zone if necessary. Any ranged who get targeted with Astral Harvest to spawn the manifestations are at risk of dying with the massive Absorb Shield. Meanwhile, your tank with the Echo needs to stay away from Araz and let your Warlocks and Shadow Priests cleave down the Echo. It should die sometime during the Intermission, so they may need to hard focus the Echo if you only have one or two cleave classes. After the third collector is activated, the fight becomes a bit of a cluster. The fourth and fifth sets of manifestations align with Silencing Tempest, which spawns the swirlies under a player. It's incredibly dangerous to have 4 players stand still under the boss and pray for no swirlies, so we always go behind the void zones for sets 4 and 5. The sixth set of manifestations is just before the intermission, and you want to clean them up ASAP. We use a knockback here to have more DPS uptime and thus switch to the collectors quicker. If you can make it to this part reliably, you are likely only a couple pulls from actually killing the boss. Alright, the intermission is mostly the same. If you are accustomed to the Heroic Zerg strat, your tanks are going to need to learn to read the room and position accordingly. One quick tip, sometimes the boss frames are hard to read and then orient yourself. Whenever a collector starts gaining energy, it will show a big purplish circle around it. You can look for that to quickly see which one to go to. On our poll, red activated first, green activated second, and purple activated third. This means tank A stayed at red with his attendant that spawns beside it, while tank B moves to green with the other attendant. After red reaches full energy and stops channeling, tank A moves to purple. Then, after green reaches full energy and stops channeling, tank B goes to purple as well. The tanks must taunt swap the attendants at this point to reset their attack speed stacks. You will wipe if there is not an attendant near a full energy collector, so your tanks must move correctly here. Forgeweaver Araz is a weird fight because very few classes line up with the fight timings. I know it can be tempting to save cooldowns for the damage amp, but I genuinely believe it's bait. More cooldown uses through the fight is way better, and for a first kill, you want to have your cooldowns at 6 minutes for the final phase anyway. Alright, the Abridged Phase One goes pretty fast, so it's important to move quickly and prioritize mechanics. Your tanks can intentionally take a circle during the triple dodge if it's going to go right through your melee, but they still hurt, so be careful about eating too many. Manifestations sets 7 and 8 go behind the Void Zone because they have the same overlap with Silencing Tempest. This final Arcane Echo soak should have everyone with immunities in it just like Phase 1. Minimizing how many players take actual HP damage here will help your healers a lot at this point in the fight. However, now all your DPS totally ignore this final Echo. It's going to have a good time wailing on your tank, but the fight will end before it reaches full energy and explodes. The ninth and final set of manifestations are knocked into the Void Zone. Yes, this shortened phase is basically identical to sets 4, 5, and 6 from before. Araz will likely be somewhere in the 20% to 25% health range, and you enter the intermission one more time. This second intermission is going to be exactly the same as before. Exact same deal for your tanks, but the order for the collectors will be random. Notably for your DPS, the collectors must all die within 5 seconds of each other during every intermission, so split your damage and make sure your Warlocks and Shadow Priests are hitting everything. We have our 2 tanks and 3 healers in one raid group, so it's easy to assign one raid group to each collector. There's a lot of distance between collectors, so having your damage be relatively balanced is important here, especially if you are melee heavy like us. Oh, one more thing. The Photon Blast, the lines on the ground, are pretty much a one-shot, so respect them. The final damage amp will likely be cut short as it automatically ends at 15%. Bloodlust here to push the last few percent and have it carry through into phase 2. Your cooldowns should also be coming up just after this point. Alright, pause. Annoyingly, as you enter phase 2, you may encounter 1 to maybe 2 bugs. Sometimes, Araz will just enter phase 2 straight away and not cast Dark Terminus, which is supposed to be about 7 seconds of free damage. Second, if you run a Paladin tank and they use Divine Shield during the intermission, it seems to taunt Araz no matter how far away he is. So in our case, since our Paladin is hanging out with Casper the Ghost, our other tank needs to taunt the boss as we enter the final phase, or this happens. Yeah, we got double whammied on this pull, but such is life sometimes. Assuming the fight doesn't bug, the final phase is pretty free. Just make sure if you get Astral Harvest to run to the back wall so adds are as far away as possible, and you should finish the encounter in 30 seconds or less. Araz will probably get one cast of Death Throes, which is a mild knockback, but the phase is so short it doesn't really matter. Reminder, only do single target damage here. Damage to the manifestations does nothing and it's a total waste. Congrats on killing Mythic Araz, but this guide isn't quite done yet. I know everyone is memeing on Fractalus being the weak aura boss, but Araz feels like the weak aura boss if you are the one setting everything up. We use the Liquid Weak Aura package, and I will link their free version in the description. If you're using Northern Sky or another package, refer to their documentation, but it should be similar. Okay, starting at the top, you can hard assign who is soaking the Arcane Echoes. The first line should be all your classes with immunities, plus any melee to get you to 9 total players. The second line should be all your ranged, basically anyone not on line 1. Have your Death Knight use AMS before every Arcane Echo and soak all of them. It makes a big difference. Some immunities, like Hunter Turtle and Netherwalk, do not prevent the heal absorb, but they remain at full HP, so it's much easier to deal with. The crowd control setup is a bit daunting at first, but you only really need to do one set of 3 and then repeat it. The note on screen is condensed for visual clarity. You need to write out each set, but I had the long form in the description below. Of course, if you are missing a class on the list, replace them with a comparable stun. Simply replace the word class with the actual character name of your player, including special characters if they have any. One final note, for the sake of simplicity, only sets 3, 6, and 9 have knockbacks in this setup. Your druid must Venn diagram the Ursol's Vortex over the Void Zone so that the manifestations snap into the Void Zone after Typhoon. It's also a pretty tight timing, so you need to Ursols immediately as they spawn. You can alternatively choose to skip knockbacks altogether and always go behind the Void Zones, and if you do, simply remove Typhoon from the list. Alright, that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, my yapping must have been helpful, so please subscribe so we can chat again soon.